Tonight, we're going to be talking about living in the real you. And we're going to be asking that question: what is it like to live in the real you? I'm Roy Burley.
And I'm Esther Branco Diaz, and this is the second part of that series, The Real You. Hello, and welcome to Trust Talks by the Purim Trust. It's really good to see you or have you with us if you're joining us live. Welcome. If you're watching this on playback later on Facebook or YouTube, then hi. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in and listening to some things that we've got to share about this subject of the real you. I'm not sure if you saw the previous episode. If you haven't yet, I really would suggest you go and watch that first, because otherwise this bit might not make too much sense, or you'll think we're completely crazy. Either way, this is the second part on that subject. So last week we were looking at there being different versions of you. There's the version that you think you are, there's the version that other people think you are, and then there is the real you. And last week we were kind of looking at that, explaining a bit about what we mean, and we're going to be picking up where we left off and diving into it even more. And like Roy said, we're going to be looking at what is it like to live in the real you. So welcome if you're joining us. Let us know, where in the world are you? Where are you watching from right now? We'd love to know who's out there, who's tuning in. Even if you're watching this on playback, write something right now and let us know who's out there and who's listening in. We'd love to have a little hello from you. Give us a like. Why not even give us a share? Because the whole purpose of Trust Talks is that some of these conversations that we're having will help someone who really needs to hear them. The whole purpose of Trust Talks is these conversations about some really difficult, sensitive issues have been conversations in my life over the years that I've had with Roy that have really helped me. They've really benefited me. They've actually changed my life. And I really hope that somebody else watching this will find it really useful, that hope will be building in their heart for a different life than they've experienced. So it's lovely to see some comments already. Hi, Princess. Thank you for your comment. She says, hi, Roy and Esther. Hope you're well. Good to be with you guys again. God bless you. Love, Princess. Thank you,
Good
Princess.
to see you, Princess.
Yeah, thank you for always tuning in and letting us know that you're there. It's lovely to have you on this journey with us. And we've got Linz as well. Hi, Lindsay. Good evening from Wolverhampton. How is it in Wolverhampton, Linz? Because it's raining here. What's it like with you, Roy?
It's sunny again.
Yeah.
All day.
Do you just make that up? Have
Yes.
you got like a nice warm orange lamp on your face?
Just cooking here in Well. No, it's been raining all day.
Okay, that's better. That's more like
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so welcome. Good to have you with us. Last week I shared this quote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few experience what you really are. And the reason that I really liked that quote is because I think it's really hard sometimes to even experience yourself what you really are, not just other people. I found that in my life. Don't think I really experienced who and what I really am until recently. So hi, Syrian. Thanks for your wave and your hello. It says, hi, guys. Locked in and ready for all the golden nuggets.
Wow.
I like that.
I could do with some nuggets right now.
Don't. You make me hungry.
With some sauce.
Oh, don't you start. Aaron was just telling me all about his steak that's coming at 8:30.
What?
Anyway, Lindsay says
Syrian.
it's winter again here in Wolverhampton. Brrr. So I'm kind of reassured that you haven't got sun either, Linz. If you are somewhere nice and sunny right now, let us know, and then we can all just feel a little bit envious. So I wanted to just say, Roy, some of the stuff I was sharing last week it's funny because when I look back on it, I come away thinking I must sound like a loon. So I was sharing a little bit about when I first experienced the real me and I saw myself as a little girl. And I thought anyone watching this could possibly think that sounds completely crazy. And so I wanted to ask, has anybody else experienced that? Let me know if you can relate to what we shared last week so that I'm not totally on my own. So if you were watching
let's be clear on your question. So are you asking, Esther, has anyone experienced and kind of it's almost like you remember yourself now, but you remember remembering when you were a child, like, oh yeah, like the real you, it was normal in a way at certain points in your childhood, and you remember it.
Yes.
And then you come into the real you now and you're like, I've been here before, I remember here.
Yes.
That is something like that you're saying. It's hard to ask these questions, aren't they? But it's not like trying to remember yourself as a child. It's like you're experiencing the real you now.
Yeah.
But you remember experiencing it when you was a child. That's what you're asking.
Yeah, and even when you've experienced yourself as the real you, having a picture or just seeing yourself when you were little, and that's how it must have felt in that time. Because we had this comment actually on YouTube during the week that somebody had watched this video of the first part of the real you from last week, and it was from Damaris, and she wrote this: I really loved this talk. I can identify with what was said about reconnecting with the child of my past, the innocent one. And I read that comment and I thought, yes, somebody else has experienced that and gets it. And I would love to know if there's anyone else out there who can relate to what I shared last week and what we're talking about.
Because the point you was making last week, not to go over it, but just for anyone who hasn't seen last week's, that your innocent part is the sacred part that has never been touched and cannot be touched. It's sealed, as the Holy Scriptures say, to the day of redemption. And it was great, wasn't it, seeing other people are relating to that as well. Yeah, I maybe I've been touched in my soul realm and in my mind and in my physical body, but there is a part of me that cannot be touched.
Yes, that's right, Roy. And tonight we're going to be looking at what is it like to live in the real you. What does it feel like? How do you do it? How do you stay there? And what problems can you face along the way?
Yeah. So Esther, you've lived in your false, what we would call our false self, for a long time. Yeah. Unconsciously. So what is it like now living in the real you? What does the real you, Esther, look like?
Well, I think I can tell you what it doesn't look like. That for most of my life, I experienced with other people saying to me over the years, if only you could see yourself differently, if only you weren't so full of self-condemnation or so self-critical, if only you could see your worth. And I could never quite get that. I knew that I was hard on myself and I didn't have a great sense of self-worth. So one thing that I would do is to repeat scriptures from the Bible over and over about myself and how God loved me and how I was valuable in his sight and he'd call me by name and I was his. And I would stick these scriptures on my wall and I would repeat them over and over, because I believe actually that repeating scripture helps transform you by the renewing of your mind. It says that in the Bible. And for some reason that didn't work for me in this area. It worked in other areas in regards to finance or hope or health, but in this place, to do with me, it wasn't working. And when I look back now, I try to think, why didn't that work? Why wasn't it working for me? Why wasn't there change in the way that I saw myself? And I think it can only be because my heart couldn't receive it. So although my head and my mouth were speaking out these things out loud, I could feel there was a resistance with my heart. Like my heart would come along and block it. Something in me would, even in the speaking out of these things, would always negate it and say, no, that's not for you. That doesn't apply to you. Or it wasn't a conscious thing, but there was a block in my heart. So to answer your question, the real me looks a lot different to it then, because it became then a struggle in my heart of more condemnation of, oh, why isn't this working for me when it should? And what am I doing wrong? And why can't I just receive it? It goes on, it perpetuates.
Yeah. Can I just say something? A little scripture. It's in Proverbs says, as a man or woman thinketh in their heart, so are they. So once something is so integrated into the heart, once you believe something in the heart, it's almost you can't. It doesn't matter how hard you try. So even though you were quoting lots of scriptures, it's very hard to penetrate once you believe something at a heart level. And if you form those beliefs early on in childhood, you don't even remember when you first started to think like it or believe, because by then you've forgotten. So you just are it. So you become that false self, believing that's who you are. Yeah, sorry, carry on, Esther. I just want to highlight that.
That's good to point that out, Roy. But one thing I found on this journey of spending time, if you like, in the real me, is I'm not quite there yet with living it out fully 24/7. I found that it's almost like, for me, going to another place. That spending time with the real me is something that for me hasn't always been easy to integrate into everyday life, because by nature I can be a person who likes to withdraw, and I think that can be true for people who've been through trauma. Isolation becomes a safe place. Not having to deal with people becomes a safe place. And it can be tricky, can't it, Roy? Because in this process of discovering the real you, it's like a place of peace, total peace, a place that you want to stay there. And I found with myself, it can, again, make me want to withdraw, to go to this peaceful place, and not, it can be difficult to bring it into the everyday. Have you found that?
Yeah. So let's just look at a couple of things. Let me ask you something here.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about going in the real you, what are we talking about, for someone who might be wondering, what on earth are you saying? What are you going on about? So we're basically taking some real simple scriptures from the teachings of Christ and from the Bible. And one is to watch. To watch what? To watch ourselves in the false you. Well, where is that? Well, that's in my thoughts and feelings. So I take a very simple scripture and I take every thought captive, not using my mind to take my thoughts captive, because my mind's the problem. I'm going deeper into my spirit and I'm watching from my, we say, true self, or my born again self, or new creation. We have so much language in the Bible to describe this, my oneness with God, whatever you want to use. But when I watch it, I see, gosh, that's not me. Like, the fact I can see it means I'm not it. And so while I'm watching it, I come into an experience of the real me. And I kind of like can relate it to probably other times in my life, like Esther said, like when I was a child or something else, or when I've been in the presence of God or something, you know, where I've been in the spirit or in worship or something spiritual. And I'm like, yeah, I know this place. I know this safe place. And so now I'm watching the old me. You might want to say your heart in this context, you know, because that's where this old self will live, you know, in our emotions and mind. Okay, so now you're watching it. Now, this is my question to you, Esther. Do you find that because you've done that regular, that you were able to believe these scriptures that you wasn't able by quoting over and over again? Suddenly, scriptures that you found that did not penetrate your heart, they now do.
Yes, I would. And I still have the experience of the old, but I also now can experience saying yes to those scriptures instead of no. So it's progress.
So this is amazing progress, especially for people that are really trying to take the word of God and sow it, but it's just like going into a ground that is just bouncing back off again.
Yeah.
The more you go into your spirit and experience yourself, that's what convinces your heart. It's the spirit that convinces your heart, not your mind. Just taking scriptures from your mind may have some, I'm sure it has some help, but really all the source of power is in the spirit, is in the divine, because it's one with God. It has the resources of the kingdom of heaven. And that's what penetrates the heart with the word. And we call this the Rhema, the God-breathed word. So it's no longer because I've quoted the Logos, the written word, over and over again. It's because the spirit is now like, shown me, like, and it's changed my heart. So this is where you get Jesus talking about, like he said, this is the most basic thing of understanding the kingdom. The kingdom's always within you, Esther. It's always your spirit realm. And he gives this little thing about the heart being the ground, and some farmer going and he's sowing the seeds, and these seeds being the word of God. And he shows you a tremendous struggle and process that takes place in changing the heart. And all of the things that will come out of the heart, all the lies, the thorns that will choke the truth, and the stones, the issues, all those things in the heart that will just not allow the roots to go deep. But then he shows you eventually a heart that has got no stones and no cares, no thorns. And this is a heart of the spirit. You see, because if you look at the other, he interprets the stones and he interprets the thorns. They're all stuff you will find in the carne, in the mind. Worries, cares, lust for other things. They're all listed there. Riches, all of those things. They're all part of what we call the carne, the old self. So really the last ground he talks about is a place where there is no old self. And this is where we get the results, Esther, from your spirit. So he's painting a picture of the spirit man. And now the word can go in and it can grow, and it takes time, seed, time, as they used to teach us in Bible school, and then harvest. You got to have time. At first, it's like nothing's happening, but keep practicing, keep being in the spirit, and eventually you get fruit. 30, 60, and 100, the Bible says. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that's really good. It's a really good explanation, isn't it? And the amazing thing is you don't have to believe what we believe for you to be able to go to that place. You know, you were saying in another episode before that we have that spirit.
Yeah. Jesus says, if you don't get this first parable of the kingdom about the seed and the farmer and the heart and stuff, he asks the question, how are you going to understand any of the rest? It's like the basics of going into the spirit. See, the other thing you mentioned, Esther, so that's the first point that you talked about there. The other thing is you mentioned, like, how is it that you can't always stay there, or you go in and out of there? So how do we deal with that side? And the point, the picture that I want to paint is one of injury and trauma. For example, you know, if somebody sprains their ankle and they can't walk, you know, I've taken to my son to the hospital because he's hurt his leg, but it wasn't serious. They didn't keep him in. They x-rayed it. He's okay. He stayed a few hours because it's like a long time, isn't it, waiting at the hospital, but they let him go. But, you know, if someone has serious trauma, serious injury to their body, car accident or something like that, God forbid, something bad happened, you can spend months, some people, I think even, you could say even longer, in a hospital bed recovering. So I would say, depending on the level of damage that we've experienced, can often depend on this, how long it takes. You know, it can take a bit longer. It's funny. It's a kind of, there's a paradox, because in one way, the pain of your past can push you in the spirit, probably quicker and easier than others, in my experience. But the damage that's been done in our soul realm, to our bodies, to our heart, to our emotions, that traumatic things that have happened, that can take a bit longer, I think, to overcome. Does that make sense, Esther? That's how I'm kind of thinking I'm seeing it.
Yeah, definitely. But isn't it interesting how it's acceptable that with a physical injury, it can take you a while to recover, or even for a lot of people with physical injury, you never fully recover.
Yeah.
And yet, I know we've touched on this before, but particularly in sort of European culture, Western culture, it's that emotional damage isn't discussed, isn't looked at, and you should be fine. You know, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go. You know, you're okay. And I think it's interesting how we don't even allow ourselves time or the ability to look at some of this stuff that we've had to deal with in our lives. And that was the whole point of our last series, wasn't it? Just to look at it. So let's talk about problems like that you can face along the way. Because even though I regularly practice this being in the real me, there are times in life that things happen, circumstances, events that can trigger reactions in us. That for me can make it really hard to be in the real me, because it's the old me coming out. Do you still have times like that, Roy? Because you seem like you got it all together. Do you still have times when older reactions are still triggered in you?
No, not at all.
There we go. That's the end of the program. Get somebody else in to help us.
No, it's just all fine now, you know. No, all the time. And Yeah, and just more recently, actually, Esther, I've experienced a lot of what we would call triggering. But it'd be interesting, Esther. I'm just curious, the people that are watching, if they've got any reactions that and they want to make any comments or ask questions. If they're getting this, I don't know if this is making sense, but what the reactions will be. But it'd be good to keep the comments and questions coming in, I think, on this one.
Yeah, definitely.
But let me, while we're waiting for that, maybe what I would just mention here, some of you might know, but I'm moving from the country to Telford, and just to give you a little bit of my history, if you like, I've spent most of my life getting out of London and away from my traumatic environment, really, away from the council estate I grew up on and so forth. And often I noticed, Esther, anytime I was going to visit my mom when she was alive, and I was just coming into the area, it would immediately trigger a load of trauma from the past. You know, lots of things that we discussed in the earlier episodes of things that happened. And you can watch that even in the first one. There's lots of trauma, and so I spent years keeping away. And even like one of the things that I've never really done, only in the Philippines, when we were in the Philippines, guys, let me just tell you this real quick. I was visiting prisons with Esther in the Philippines. She's my witness. And this one was a police station. We did prisons and we did police stations. Now, these police stations, you could stay there for years, can't you, Esther, before they even get tried or whatever, in a police station. And if someone doesn't bring you food, you could starve in there. Am I right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, my gosh, Esther took me to this place and they said, okay, you need to preach the gospel to these guys. And they were behind bars. There was about 70 guys in. It was quite a confined space, Esther, wasn't it? They couldn't fit them. They had to have hammocks for these guys to sit in because they physically could not fit these guys in there. And to be honest, it horrified me. And to cut a long story short, I had them all singing. I didn't know what to do. And I asked the Lord, and this thought came to me, teach him a song. So I taught him this song. Jesus is a winner man, a winner man, a winner man. And then by the end, I don't know if you remember, the whole prison cell was singing We Are on the Winning Side. But anyway, I have steered clear of prisons, Esther. And that's part of the trauma as well, because my whole life I was visiting one of my brothers, first in boarding schools, because he wouldn't go to school. They used to go out stealing and so forth. And I would go there and it was bad because he would want to come home with us and he'd be wrestled to the ground. I remember him running through the kitchen at the boarding home, grabbing a couple of knives and then wrestling to the ground, and my mum crying. And then it went on to ball stores and DC and young man's prison. And eventually it was so painful for me. I remember when he first got sent to like the main big prison, because he'd hardly ever come out of prison, just for a few months. And I remember praying, Lord, please don't let him go to that jail, you know, where the big guys, because he was going to be only 18 and going to big man's prison. And I remember praying, and my older brother come and says, our brother's been sent down. And I remember from that day, I made this like inner vow, because it was so painful. And I said, I can't care about him anymore. It's too painful. And so I stopped going to prisons to see him. I know it sounds bad, but it was just too painful for me. It wasn't because I didn't love him, didn't care. So I just steered clear of prisons. And so I just kind of stayed, if you like, amongst where I felt safe, which was mainly middle class people and stuff like that. And I stayed away from all of that. And I've done that for years now. I landed up in the country. But I'm saying all this, Esther, to say this. Just recently, I've been asked to help with a charity that helps guys who come out of prison. They're on heroin and spice and everything. They're getting off all of that. And to help the chaplain out here in Telford to work with these guys. And I did my first day there. When I came back, I was triggered. What I mean is all the trauma rose up in me that I haven't felt for years. And I even found myself really weakened by that, to be honest, and sort of got a bit lost in it. It caught me off guard, and I had to really start watching, like, man, what is going on? And then I thought, every time I said to someone, I'm going to Telford from this beautiful area I live in, and no one had anything positive to say. It was only negative. And I thought, oh no, where am I going? And now I'm going to be bringing my son there. And I could feel unsafe again. And all this stuff started triggering, just me moving. So for these last couple of weeks, man, my trauma levels, if you like, that haven't been triggered for ages have been. And when I've talked to people, I could tell, like, they're like, oh, you'll be fine, And I'm like, yeah, I know. But the thing about trauma, it's not rational. It doesn't. When you go into a state of trauma, you don't think. You're in a survival mode. You either freeze or you fight. So you get this aggression and anger, or you want to run away. And if you can't run, you fight, Yeah. And so I've been having all these kind of feelings in the last couple of weeks. And I could tell people just didn't get it. They don't get it. I was walking with someone across the aqueduct, and they were petrified. This is a real strong person, got it all together. They was in tears at one point, just walking across. And I said, you have to face this trauma, because if you run away from it, you may never walk across one of these again. And they did. They walked there and they walked back again. But for me, it was almost comical, because I was not scared at all. I could probably hang off the edge, and I'd be fine, But just to walk across, it triggered trauma, and the person was traumatized. So the point I'm trying to make is, there's certain things when trauma's in your body and you have never faced it. Like, I spent my life running away from it. And that's why I'm in the country and safe and all the rest of it. Because that's what you do, Esther. That's what you said, isn't it? You find a safe place and you stay there.
Yeah.
But when God says that's enough now you need to go face that, you're going to be triggered. Whatever that is, whatever that looks like, whether it's walking across the aqueduct or going back into the city to work and going amongst people that you've been running away from, or whatever it is, you're going to be triggered. And the trick here now is to do what we're saying, what Jesus says, to watch and pray, to take every thought captive, to stay in the spirit, to know what is happening to me isn't really happening to the real me. It's something that's happened in my past. It's something that's happened to my body, to my emotions as a child that I couldn't deal with. And it's never left my body, but now I have an opportunity to watch it. And by watching it, and maybe we'll do some of these techniques again, by watching it in my spirit seems to dissolve that trauma, and it gets released from my body. So I'm no longer afraid. How does that sound, Esther, to your
question? I think I can fully relate to that. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not always those big traumas that triggers. It's not always big traumas that are triggered. Sometimes it's just more subtle things, isn't it?
Yeah.
You realize, why am I responding like I am? Or, you wouldn't necessarily know that it's trauma because it's it doesn't seem like a big deal, and yet the more you watch it, the more you notice things that need to be watched. Wouldn't you say,
Yeah,
Roy?
yeah, that's it. And that's the trick of staying in your spirit or staying in your real self, is to be awake. That's what the scripture says. Be awake, be alert. So
Mm.
you're alert to what's happening to yourself all the time. It's very powerful, Esther, to live like this. Like, it's extremely powerful.
Yeah,
It can change everything. Don't you agree? Can you see how it's changed your life?
definitely. And it almost makes you wonder, how did I survive before? You know what I mean? Because I mean, I know when I look back on my life, I feel like it's been a fight for survival, or a fight with situations, or a fight with people, or, you know, a fight not to feel the way I feel. And to find a place of peace is the most life-changing thing, that I wish everyone could experience that. Do you know what I mean? That's why
Yeah,
we're doing what we're doing,
yeah,
so that somebody else just might grab a hold of some of this and it would help them too.
yeah,
Because when I look back, without knowing this stuff and without being able to apply it, life was pretty miserable.
yeah.
Mm.
So let's test what we're saying, because let's see if this is be great. I don't know if any comments are coming in, but let's test it with the teachings of Christ. Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the things, Jesus, like, let's look at the whole point of Christ, what he came to do. He came to bring us into the kingdom, which he says within us, which we understand to be back into relations with our true self, which we call a born again self, new creation, whatever language you want to use, and this complete connection with God, the divine. Now, if what we're saying is true, Esther, have you experienced what Jesus is saying when he says the kingdom is within you? Do you relate to the teachings of Christ in that way? Is that real?
yeah.
Or are we
So
just making it fit?
no, I would say that very much to be true. I wouldn't have known necessarily that that's what it was, but now I feel I understand more of what he means when he says the kingdom is within.
Okay, so here's another test. He says when you go into the kingdom, you'll know, because he says there will be a feeling. He uses the word righteousness. So in other words, you will feel as though you are totally in right standing with God. You're totally clean, pure, undefiled. That you would have peace, and you would be happy. You like have joy. Is that your experience of going in your spirit in the
Yes,
kingdom, in the real
definitely.
you?
Definitely. Like I've already mentioned, the peace part is the most bit that I identify with. I wouldn't necessarily have known what it meant to feel righteous, and yet feeling like you're okay, you're in right standing. Then yes, that's how I felt when I saw myself as a little girl. Um, and I guess, yeah, there was a feeling of contentment, which is peace, but also combined with joy, I think.
Yeah. How does this feel to you when you're actually seeing scriptures you probably knew as a child? Actually, wow, they actually work. It's real stuff.
Yeah, that's an incredible moment, because again, these would be scriptures that I would have looked at before and thought, well, am I really righteous? You know, am I particularly peaceful? Probably not. To actually experience that, yes, I am those things.
Yeah. And,
Amazing.
and I want to say something. This is sad in a way, but maybe exciting also, because we're entering into something here. But I've hardly ever heard anyone teach the teachings of Christ about this, about the kingdom and the experience of the teachings of Christ. They might mention them, but they don't mention them in this context of going within the kingdom in our true self. And in a way it's sad, but in another way this is exciting, because many of us, you know, can look at what Jesus said afresh and see. Let's do a few more tests, Esther. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So the other thing, it says when you're in the kingdom, Paul uses different language now. So I'm going to take you to Paul's language in Galatians 5:21-22. He says the fruit of the Spirit, so the fruit of living in the kingdom. And he says, now see if you can relate to any of these words. He lists, I think, about 9 things. He says love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, meekness, faith, self-control. He said this would be the fruit of living in your true self, in your spirit. Does any of those relate?
Yeah, definitely. I think before these experiences, I think, well, maybe I've got a couple of those. But now I can experience them in fullness and much more. Things like, I think, like I shared before, my experience of trauma, I was coming out of that. I've been in fight mode, and felt like my whole life, like I didn't have a voice. I wouldn't be heard. And it's been an issue. That's a trigger for me, that getting married, if I felt like my husband wasn't listening to me, I would feel like, you're not listening to me. And yet in those circumstances and those moments now, which normally would trigger this, you don't care, you're not listening, I have less and less of those, because I'm living in a slightly different place. So I think I definitely have a bit more patience. I've got a long way to go, but
it just depends where you're at.
Yeah.
If you're locked into the old self, you've got
Yeah.
0 patience.
Yeah.
But if you're in the new self, you've got total patience. Is that how you see it?
Yes. And another trigger for me would have always been living in a place of believing that I don't matter. Something that would have triggered me would be someone pushing in front of me in a queue. To me, it would be like, see, I don't matter. I told you I don't matter. But how dare they? How dare they make the point that I don't matter? And I wouldn't have been rude, but I would be like, excuse me.
Yeah.
Here.
But
and now I have a bit more. I have self-control, but equally, I have more care for people. I don't know, more kindness, more love.
Yeah, which is the fruit of the Spirit: kindness, love, gentleness. So, like Esther, let's see the other thing about the teachings of Christ. They will either get you into the kingdom, into your true self within you, or they will show you, there will be pointers of how to stay in. And you just gave 2 examples of one of them. So I want to test the teachings of Christ again in this, what we're saying. He says that we should take what he called the lower seat. Okay. And one of the things you see about the false self, or the old Adam, whatever language you want to use, is always rushing to the higher seat, the higher place, to be seen, to be noticed, to be important. But Jesus says, like, if you want to be in the kingdom, you want to stay in the kingdom, you want to see how you're getting on, take the lower seat of humility and see how well you react in the lower seat. It's a great watching place to see, am I in the spirit or am I in the flesh? Am I in the mind? And so when you sometimes you're put in the lower seat, someone's came in front of you in the queue, or your husband's not listening, and then, or it's, you just, no one's noticed you, your pastor hasn't said hello, your boss disregarded your hard work, whatever it is, your wife hasn't noticed you've washed up, whatever. And you're actually happy and at peace. And like you said, you feel compassion and kindness, and you're sat in your true self in the lower seat, and it doesn't matter.
Mm.
It's very powerful, isn't it? Like, it's an extreme power. And then if you, so he, in the teachings of Christ, he says, always head for the lower seat. So always head for where you can just, you know, some people say, look, I'm always in the lower seat, you know, I'm never out. That's where they put me. Everyone puts me in the lower seat. That's where I live. But in what attitude do you live in the lower seat? Do you live like, "Rah, I know my rights, I want my rights," in that false self? Or do you live content? And it doesn't matter if you're like, "Rah," because now you can watch, you can like, look at me. Look at me when someone pushes in front. Look at me when someone's not wanting to listen, or when no one gives a like to my video I just made that I thought was great. Look at my reactions.
But can I ask you, Roy, actually, because Linz has asked a question.
Yeah, sorry.
I think it's a good time to bring it in because it's along these lines. So thank you, Linz, for writing a question. She said, my carnal mind and mouth work much quicker than my spirit man. Help. How do I slow it down and change the balance to right thinking?
That's a real good one.
Really good. Thank you, Linz.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, I think it was last week, man, I was triggered because obviously I'm at that point at the minute where everything's easy to get, and something happened, someone did something, and I was ready. And to be honest with you, at first I was unconscious, in the sense I just fell into it. And so I picked up the phone to ring them. Thankfully, they were busy, so I didn't get through. Had I opened my mouth at that point, it would have been a disaster, Esther. I mean, it would be irreparable because I was mad. But because I had a bit of time and I'm like, okay, I can't ring them now. So I started to watch. And because I had time to watch, then while I was watching and thinking, they rang me and I was like a different person. Like, I was like, hi, how you doing? How's it going? And it was like, and it was genuine. I wasn't acting, you know, I wouldn't act, I don't think. I was being real, but I was in a different place. And I think if we could, the Bible says this, doesn't it, Lindsay, that like the tongue is untamable, man. It sets hell, it is set on fire by hell. It's connected to the lake of fire, man. And once you open your mouth, they're gonna get burnt, you know. And you think, why did I open my mouth, you know?
Yeah.
So I think the only thing we can be aware of is, see, I think what's being triggered, Lindsay, is what they term as our pain body, this trauma that's in us. And the slightest thing triggers it. But you have got just a few moments of consciousness if you stay awake at the very early stages of any triggering. So as soon as you feel rising up inside you, if you can watch it at that moment and keep your mouth, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to me, keep my mouth shut, then, and just breathe deeply, because actually breathing deeply is very powerful. Because when you go into trauma, you breathe shallow, so your body knows it's in a trauma state and it stays there. If you breathe into your belly, now I see why people say, you know, breathe deeply and count to 10. It makes perfect sense to me now. But if you breathe into your belly, you're actually signaling to your body that you're not in danger. That's not a major problem. And it just gives you a couple of seconds to watch. If you can grab it in the first few seconds and watch it, you can sit with it. And it may take a few minutes. And to be honest, I think it takes us sometimes a bit longer in women, okay, than men. Now, I'm not being sexist, but some of the things that I've looked at, the way we're wired with emotions and stuff like that, our cooling down periods is slightly longer. Have you heard that before, Esther?
No,
That
I haven't. This is interesting.
I know it's going to sound sexist, but I'm not being sexist. It's what I've read, but I'm willing to be corrected. But I think it's Caroline Leaf that said it.
No.
That our cooling for a woman, the cooling down period takes longer. So you need a bit more time, and you need someone to be kind and gentle with you to help it go a bit quicker. But the point I'm trying to make is if you catch it early and watch it, it may take a few minutes, it may take an hour, but you just don't open this. This is the key. Shut up and just keep letting your body feel it, watch it. Let the thoughts come, let them go. Don't engage. Just stay there. Eventually, actually, the very trigger will push you into the spirit. It's got the power to push you into God. So you can actually, what the enemy uses for evil, you can actually turn it into gold. Gold nuggets, Syrian, that you mentioned earlier. There's a gold nugget, right?
There you go. Capture that.
Help?
Well, actually, that's really good. Well, I hope, Lindsay, that has answered your question a little bit. But it's made me think, Roy, let's do it. You know, let's try this out. Show us some techniques. Okay.
So just the same as what we've done before. We're going to look mad. We're going to look crazy. But basically, what we want to do is just breathe first. Breathe into your belly. And just sit, relax, close your eyes. If you can lay down. Try not to fall asleep. But everyone try this. Wherever you are, even those that are being recorded now, just see how it's done. And it's just a very simple thing to do the scriptures, to watch and pray, to take every thought captive. Let me show you how to do it now. So now ask yourself, and I'm going to use you as my guinea pig, for want of a better word, Esther. But everyone else do this as well. Ask yourself, what am I feeling in my body right now? So I want you to do that, Esther, and just watch and allow yourself to feel and see what you're feeling. Where's your strongest emotions?
Anxiety.
Okay, whereabouts is that? In your stomach, chest?
I can feel it in my chest.
Okay,
and in my shoulders.
Okay, so let's focus on the chest area. And then some of you may have anxiety too. Sometimes you have it in your stomach area, chest. Some people in their throat, like what Esther's experiencing, also the tightness around your back and your neck. Some people in their jaw as well. But to breathe deeply and to now watch that. Let it rise. Don't try and fight it or get rid of it. So just watch that for a bit, Esther. And everyone, watch the most strongest emotion that you're feeling. Just look at it. And keep breathing deeply into your stomach. So this is the first part of watching and praying. So while you're watching it, notice that what's happening to you, Esther, isn't you. That you're actually in your spirit watching, and that you're safe. And if everyone else as well, you just notice, see the difference between what's happening in your body and what's happening in the real you, where you're just sat secure. And breathe deeply. Now, as you're watching that, Esther, what seems to happen to that anxiety? Is it increasing, decreasing, the same? Decreasing. Okay. And it'd be interesting, those who are watching now, to ask you that question, and you can comment what's happening. Can you feel that anxiety or whatever you're feeling? You can even do this. So like where your shoulders are now, you feel the tightness there, Esther. So just to focus where the tightness is, and always in your body, if you have tightness, it's where it's where your body's contracted, and often stress does that. And so you want to focus there, but also do some stretches as you focus. So get the focus first, feel where the tightness is, and then just like stretch your neck. So maybe just put a little pressure on that stretch. Don't overstretch, and as you feel that stretch, this is where they're going to really think you're mad, Esther. As you pull on that stretch, focus in on the stretch, Esther, where you feel that anxiety, that stress. Hold it and focus in on that. The spirit is your spirit is so powerful. And then just do the other side, and then just do the sort of stretches you would do, because I know you're a physio, so you know the type of stretches. But hold the stretches and focus. The point I'm making, and you test this, your spirit, it trumps. It's so much more powerful than anything happening in your body. So if you've got pain, I was with a lady the other day and I was saying, watch your pain, allow yourself to feel. And she was focusing. So anyone with pain, just focus, just look at it from your spirit. And so that's the first thing. And then you find the pain will kind of come to the surface, but just by watching it, it disperses. So this is just a very first basic step of the prayer. So if you go again to watching, Esther, and breathe in, and you go, say, that chest area, is it clear now?
Yeah, there's only a little bit left.
Okay. So then now what I'd say, drop down deeper into your true self. Does that make sense? Where you can sense your real being, where there's peace and love. Can you sense that?
Yes.
And then from there, guys, that's where you pray. You don't pray from your head, you pray from your spirit. So you inquire, like, is there anything my spirit wants to pray right now, Esther? So just inquire in yourself, is there anything your spirit wants to say or pray? And we can all do this. Just see. Does anything?
Peace and health in my home.
Mm-hmm. So you begin to release that. So this is the watching and the praying. So now you release your prayer. So that's releasing the kingdom that's in heaven, that's in you. Now it's coming into the earth. You're releasing it. You see that, Esther?
Yeah. And
that changes the atmosphere in your home. It releases the peace in your home. You can actually start to feel your atmosphere. People can feel the atmosphere in your house change. Someone came to my house the other day and they said, "Oh, can I just use your toilet?" And they came and they go, "Wow, so peaceful in here." I thought it's so messy in here, but never mind. Can I show you the second thing, Esther, or are we out of time?
Yeah. If you can do it in 2 minutes, Roy.
Okay. So the second thing is, guys, to do the same again, breathe, and just ask yourself, I just say this thought, I wonder what my next thought's going to be, and then wait for it. And then, Esther, let me know when your next thought's going to be.
If my daughter's okay.
Yeah. And then the idea is whatever thought you guys had out there as well, don't engage with it. Breathe deeply again. Allow yourself to feel what that thought brought and say, I wonder what my next thought's going to be. And then wait.
If she's gone to sleep, okay.
And breathe deeply. And then allow yourself to feel what that brought without engaging. Then I wonder what my next thought's going to be. And then continue to breathe deeply and feel now and wait for the next thought all at the same time. Feel your body and wait and let me know when it comes.
Yeah, I'm peaceful.
Yeah. So that basic technique, Esther, is how you capture the thoughts, taking every thought captive. So you're watching your thoughts, you're watching your emotions, and that gives you a chance not to be in your old you.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling peaceful. See what you're saying there. I'm now entering in my real natural state, my real naturally spiritual state.
Yeah, it's good, right? But also just to say, like for me now, when I go to that place, it's a lot quicker until I reach that peaceful point. But it can take a while,
Yeah.
initially, can't it? The thoughts
Yeah.
can just keep coming.
Oh,
But
yeah.
stick at it, keep going, you know, and it will get easier. It will get quicker. It will become part of what you do in your everyday, day to day. So I'd love to know, for those of you who've just tried these exercises or these techniques, write something down. We want to know what you feel right now. What effect has this had on you? Just write it. Don't overthink it. Just send us a
Did
comment.
you fall asleep?
Sorry?
Sometimes people fall asleep the
Yeah.
first time because it's the first time they've been so relaxed.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to experience, and I hope that some of you have been able to experience that or will experience that in playback. I'm afraid that we're running out of time, but we'd still love to know your comments. So Trust Talks is going to be taking a little break for 3 weeks because Roy's moving house. So we'll be back with you in 3 weeks' time, which will be Thursday, the 10th of June, with our next series. And here's a little teaser.
How would you like to improve on your relationship with your partner?
How would you like to improve on your relationship with your children?
Or what about improving on your relationship with yourself?
How about improving on your relationship with work?
How about improving on your relationship with food, with nature? Join us on our brand new series.
How to cultivate healthy relationships.
Every Thursday, 7:30 on Trust Talks.
Ooh.
Can't wait.
It's going to be a good one. I don't know. We've had several comments from people over the last couple of series that we've done about, you know, how do you develop things better with your children, or how do you deal with a relationship? How do you have trust? How do you trust God? You know, all these things. How do you cultivate healthier relationships? So although we're going to be taking a little bit of a break, we will be back with you going strong for a few weeks from Thursday, the 10th of June, here at the same place at Trust Talks every Thursday at 7:30. But all there is to say for now is keep your comments coming. We'd love to know what you felt after these techniques tonight. Aaron has said that it's a miracle he's still awake because he feels super relaxed. So that's good. So thank you ever so much. Yeah, thanks for joining with us. Thanks for taking part. We really appreciate you. And we will see you on the 10th of June for more Trust Talks by the Purim Trust.
Thank you for watching Trust Talks by the Purim Trust. To find out more about the work that we do supporting vulnerable women and children, you can go to thepurimtrust.org and get involved with building hope in the lives of those who need it.